Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to have you here with us today. There have been many items on our agenda today, and I have seen all of your participation. It's been wonderful, and I know that you will participate as we go on further, building the voter base of the Conservatives. I asked you, what is the election about? The economy is stupid. I'm sure some of you might have heard that as a past president said. It's the economy. Now, as we move forward, the board of your party will do its best to produce policies which do address this most important issue. But there are other important issues also on our agenda. As you heard earlier with our frame, thank you Paul for doing the frame, smaller government, family values and policies at work. I would like to focus right now though on, and we talked about some of this, equality before the law, irrespective of race, creed, colour, religion or belief, is a fundamental pillar of the Conservatives. A growing number of voters appear disconsolate with their centre-right incumbents for not having stated clearly their position on this issue. In fact, recently, a board member of National said that it was inappropriate to address Māori issues before the election. And so it is this issue which I will address at this point in time. Being the teacher, here's a lesson. In 1986, when the Royal Commission on the Electoral System invited submissions on the question of retention or abolition of separate Māori representation, the opinions advocated by the major political parties were as diverse as their philosophies. Labour supported the continuation of Māori seats, and they proposed that they should vary according to the numbers on the Māori roll and their children, with the same population quota per seat being applied to both general and Māori seats. National was against any increase in the number of Māori seats and proposed that they should be abolished, with a common roll instituted by the time of the 1993 general election. The vast majority of non-Māori submissions on this item supported the abolition of separate Māori representation, while with one exception, all of the Māori submissions were in favour of the continuation of separate representation in Parliament. So the introduction of MMP currently has seen the representation by Māori in Parliament explode. An immediate consequence of MMP was that the stranglehold that Labour had on 4 Māori seats in the general election since 1943 was broken in 1996 by New Zealand First winning the 5 separate Māori seats. In the 1993 Parliament, there were 7 Māori representatives, 4 from the separate seats and 3 in the general seats. That is, some 7% of Parliament were Māori. In 1996, the first general election under MMP, 16 of the 120 MPs were Māori, and that is 13%. Today, the number of Māori MPs is well above 13%. However, the definition of what now constitutes a Māori does add complication to doing the maths. The question for you, which confronts New Zealand today, is whether it is valid to retain but separate Māori representation. Has MMP provided an electoral system which overcomes the justification for separate representation? I know you're thinking about this. Do the significantly enhanced formal and informal educational standards of Māori since 1867, when the separate Māori seats were first introduced, with the electoral changes that were advanced by MMP, provide the combination of changes which ensure that Māori can compete in the political arena without paternalistic concessions? Is it time to put behind us what a growing number of New Zealanders are seeing as a system of reverse racism and separatism? In my view, and the opinion of the board, of the Conservative Party, the answer is yes. Time to change, and I will explain why. The right to vote, or suffrage, as it was described in 1852, was subject to a property qualification. Only males aged 21 and over and who owned or leased land of a specific minimum value were entitled to vote. As an overwhelming number of Māori at the time held their land in common and not on an individual basis, most of them failed to qualify for the vote. So the adoption of Māori Representation Act 1867 overcame these problems with the practical solution by institution of a separate arrangement for Māori. Failure to meet the property qualification was the justification for separate Māori representation in Parliament. What's more, those Māori who did meet the property qualification were also entitled to vote in both the Māori and the European constituencies. The precedent for giving votes to males who may not have met the property qualification had been set in 1862. However, gold mining, the Otago gold mining communities, succeeded in gaining special representation for non-land owning Westland gold miners to elect two representatives to Parliament. Like the legislation pertaining to the gold miners, the Māori Representation Act was intended as a temporary measure. But unlike gold miners, Māori representation did not disappear, nor did they adjust as quickly as had been expected to the European system. Whereas special representation for gold mining communities was abolished in 1870, Māori representation was extended a further 5 years in 1872 and then again in 1876, indefinitely. After the abolition in 1893 of the provision of that property qualification to vote, the creation of a system of dual representation for Māori and non-Māori was firmly set in place. Okay, so we've come a long way since our forefathers in Parliament determined that Māori had not assimilated European laws and customs as quickly as they intended. Why then do we persist with separate representation for Māori? The Royal Commission on the Electoral System had this to say. Although they were not set up for this purpose, the Māori seats have nevertheless come to be regarded by Māori as an important concession to and the principal expression of their constitutional position under the Treaty of Waitangi. To many Māori, the seats are also political forms through which Māori have been given effect. Okay. The Fisheries Deed of Settlement, the Tainui Settlement, and the Ngāi Tahu Settlement are manifestations of honouring the Treaty of Waitangi. Aside from the fact that the reason separate Māori representation was introduced in 1867 had nothing to do with honouring the Treaty of Waitangi, but it was for the reason of franchising people who practiced the communal property ownership. As I've already explained, my response to the conclusion of the Commission by the Royal Commission is that they have badly underestimated Māori with whom I associate and with whom I'm related to, just like many of you. I have the unfailing confidence in Māori that they have progressed sufficiently since 1867, that we have come to the point where Māori are sufficiently able to find their way of life and be educated and worldly, to be as capable as the next person, to make his or her own way in life without a political crutch of 5 separate guaranteed seats in Parliament. I also possess sufficient confidence in modern Māori to take advantage of the MMP political environment to establish fair and proportionate representation of Māori in Parliament. Examples of those with Māori heritage who succeeded without unequal rights before the law, our current senior political advisor, who is not here today, is an example of what a person without a privileged upbringing can achieve. He's got heritage of French, Norwegian, Irish, Scottish, Welsh and Royal Māori pedigree. Ross Morant rose through the ranks of the New Zealand Police to commissioned rank, graduated a BA and part of a law degree at Auckland University, on the way to being elected as a national MP for 3 terms, during which he graduated Masters in Victoria University. Owning a house next to Sir Doug Myers in Remuera, before embarking on a career of international commercial enterprise and being made a diplomatic representative for a foreign country. Right Honourable Winston Peters, a fellow student at the same high school as Ross, university graduate in law, and now the longest serving MP. Honourable Clem Simich, don't know that person, some of you might. A former national MP, former lawyer, and before that a police detective, also from the same region as Ross and Mr. Peters. All of these are examples of New Zealanders with Māori heritage who made it without special treatment for Māori. And so for the reasons I have enunciated as a member of the Conservative Party who would like to be in a coalition party in Parliament, we introduce our policy to abolish Māori seats in Parliament. Finally, may I say to you, a core policy of the Conservative, which is, I explained, equality before the law, irrespective of race, creed, colour, religion or beliefs, we recognise the importance of ethnicities embracing their historical culture, be it Scottish, with your Highland dancing and bagpipes, Dalmatians dancing, I don't even know what that is, Kolo, is it? Any Dalmatians here? I don't know where you got that one from. Māori embracing Māori tianga or Te Ao Māori. But to impose this personal preference on the wider populace is unacceptable. And this is what we were being talking about today. So as we march forward to rebuild our badly damaged country, New Zealand must become a monocultural society and not multicultural. Thank you.